What's up YouTube? Welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be sharing all of my best tips and advice for all of you breastfeeding mamas out there. It doesn't matter if you are a first-time mom like myself, or if you are not a first-time mom but it's your first time breastfeeding, or even if you've breastfed before, because every baby is going to be a different experience with breastfeeding. So hopefully the tips and the advice that I leave you guys with will help you transition, because breastfeeding is definitely a process and it can be kind of overwhelming in the beginning if it takes a while to get used to it. So hopefully these tips will get you guys through the hump a lot sooner. If this is your first time here, I'm a first-time mom. I just got past my fourth trimester with my baby girl, so she's now 14 weeks. I'm also a stepmom to a now 13-year-old boy, so my channel is tailored to being a first-time mom, and I'm soon going to start making videos about my blended family as well. So it's all about parenting mommy lifestyle. So if this is your first time here and you enjoy what you see, you might as well just go ahead and subscribe to my channel and like this video if you like it. So let's get into it. Okay, so tip number one, most of us have our babies either in the hospital or the birth center, but even if you don't, I highly suggest that you look into consulting with a lactation specialist. So at the hospital, more than likely they are going to have a lactation specialist that comes around before you get discharged. And if you are working with a birth center, which I was before I ended up having a hospital birth, they most of the time usually have a lactation consultant as well. So that is probably the first thing I would definitely tell you guys, do not skip out on. That's a resource that you absolutely want to utilize, because you can watch all the YouTube videos on advice. You can do all the research about breastfeeding 101 and things like that, like I did prior to, but until you have somebody who can watch you and actually see how you nurse and give you advice on what you're specifically doing wrong, or what you could be doing better, or how you can be helping baby get a better latch and things like that, that's definitely a resource that you absolutely want to utilize. So I know when I was at the hospital, I was so eager to talk to a lactation consultant, because we just needed to get it right, me and my baby Zen. Oh, here's my baby Zen. I didn't even insert a picture or anything, but there go my baby. And the lactation consultant that I had, she was actually phenomenal. Like, she was so good. She gave me the best advice ever, which for me, one problem I was having when I was attempting to breastfeed my daughter was, you know, you try to guide your breast like into their mouth, and not just the nipple, because that's gonna make it hurt, but you want to put the whole areola in their mouth. So what I was doing was, I was taking my fingers like this and like pressing it up against my breast and trying to just get her to latch on like right outside of the areola like this. And she was telling me that was all wrong. So she gave me this advice that I can't forget because it's kind of catchy. She said, remember, C, not V. So this is what I was doing and trying to put it into her mouth, but she was saying you want to use a C to actually cup the whole breast and try to guide her towards your mouth, instead of doing this and giving the baby a limited amount of space. Because as I said, you want to get the whole entire areola in the baby's mouth, not just the nipple. If just the nipple goes in there, I can tell you from firsthand experience, that's going to cause pain. And if they're doing that for too long, like an entire nursing session, which I can tell you from experience causes a lot of pain, it could actually bruise the nipples, and y'all don't want to do that, trust me. So by using your whole hand in a cup motion like this, the baby's not limited to feeling your hands. If you go like this, they're gonna close their latch even smaller, because they can feel your hands on the outside. It's gonna be like this. But if you have a whole cup like this putting in their face, they have the ability to open up their mouth wide and latch on. So that was the biggest takeaway that I had that helped me so much from the lactation consultant, which had I not gotten that information from her just by her watching me and seeing what I was doing wrong, and even down to the hold, how I was holding her, and just a whole bunch of stuff, that's going to be your best resource. So definitely take advantage of that if you have the ability to. And if you know anybody who's a lactation consultant, talk with them as well, because one of my girlfriends, she's not a lactation consultant, but she's a pediatric nurse, so she does have background in, you know, all of this kind of stuff. And if you don't have any medical background, then you might just be completely lost, especially if you don't know anybody who is a breastfeeding mom. So she also gave me advice and showed me like how to hand express and things like that. So definitely utilize your resources, because you're just going to be spending a lot of time that you don't need to be in pain or kind of wanting to give up on the hump of the process when you don't need to be. So definitely rule number one, utilize your resources. And if you can get a lactation consultant to help you out like early on, first couple of days of baby's life, then that will be the best thing for you, hands down. Okay, tip number 2 are some more C's for you, which is remain calm and consistent. If you're worried about how much milk your baby's getting within those first couple of days, you know, when you're just starting to breastfeed them, don't worry. I know I was freaking out at first because she was so sleepy after 31 hours of labor. Both of us were tired, but she was so sleepy that every time I attempted to feed her, which was every 2 to 3 hours, that's what the nurse at the hospital was telling me to do, she would get on and she would just maybe do real quick, and then she would be like sleep, and I'd be trying to wake her up, or I'd just be like, you need to eat, like you need to eat. And I would tell the nurse, like, I mean, I'm trying to breastfeed her, but she keeps falling asleep and she keeps doing this, and the nurse had to keep reminding me that she just went through an exhaustive labor just like you did. She's tired, okay? And it's okay, because within the first 24 to 48 hours, they sleep a lot and their stomach is literally this small. I'm not exaggerating. Their stomach is literally this small. So your real milk, like the milky milk, doesn't come in yet for another couple of days after you have the baby anyways. But what's going to bring that milk in, and this is why it's important to be consistent, is babies suckle. So you want to keep attempting to feed baby every 2 to 3 hours or so while after you had the baby, because they say baby is the best form of pumping. And so even those little bits of suckles are going to send those signals to your brain, back to your bloodstream, to let your body know that baby's here now and we need to start producing milk. So the first couple of days you'll be producing what they call liquid gold, which is actually colostrum, but it's a yellowish color liquid that comes out of your breast, and it's definitely not in abundance the way that your regular milk comes in. So it might not seem like baby's getting a lot in because it's like not that much that's really coming out and they're not nursing for too long, but don't freak out about that. Just stay calm and be consistent with how much they're attempting to nurse within those couple of days. Even if it seems like they're not getting anything, it's gonna get them in the habit of learning, you know, how to drink, how to nurse, essentially. And then, like I said, the repetitious suckling on your nipples are oh, that sounds so weird. The repetitious suckling on your breasts are also going to send those signals for your real milk to come in, so that once their stomach does start growing, real milk will be coming in to feed them, right? And so that's a good way to make sure that you do what you can to get a head start on your milk supply coming in, because some women have problems with the amount of milk they produce, and there's a bunch of different factors that goes into that. So I'm not saying this is a definite, if you're consistent, that your milk supply will be abundant, but it is something to keep in mind because it can definitely make a big difference in your breastfeeding journey and your ability to breastfeed altogether. So tip number 2, be calm, consistent, and patient, essentially. Tip number 3 is so important. This was actually advice that I got from one of my aunties. Don't watch the clock. So I remember right after I had my baby, I had a bunch of family visiting me and they were helping out and everything, and every time it would be time for me to nurse her would be my time to kind of like get away from the crowd and just go into the room, me and her, and I would take my phone with me and I would start to reply back to everyone who had been congratulating me and reaching out to me in the past couple of days. And so I had called my aunt back and I was like, I'm so sorry, I'm just calling you back. I just had a baby, you know, whatever. But I told her that I was using my breastfeeding time to return calls and to do stuff like that. And she told me that someone once told her, when you're breastfeeding, or at least early on, you know, before you get comfortable with it, don't use that time to do other things. You want to actually use that time to pay attention to baby. And it might seem like 30 minutes or however long you're nursing of just sitting there watching your baby seems like you're doing almost absolutely nothing, and you feel like you have no time to yourself and you whatever, you know, all of those things about being a mom of a newborn baby. But at first it didn't really click to me what she meant, because I really was not understanding how I could just sit here and watch her for 30 minutes like nothing's changing basically. But as time went on, I started to realize, because I would literally, when I started feeding her, I would look at the clock and I would look at my phone so periodically, I don't know, so much throughout the time that I was feeding her, that I just knew that she's supposed to eat for about 30 minutes. So I would watch it to the minute and be like, okay, we're done. Because it wasn't like a fun thing at first, you know, it was something that I wanted to get out of the way so I could just go back to not having to sit in the same position for like 30 minutes feeling like I'm not doing anything. So I was watching the clock, and that actually made it drag out even longer. So when I stopped watching the clock and actually became patient, I feel like, I swear to God, it just passes by so much sooner than what it used to be when I was wishing that it would go by sooner. So that's one thing. And then another thing is, since I also stopped distracting myself during that time and paying attention to her, I started to realize, like, picking up on her cues, knowing when maybe she fell asleep and she needs to be woken back up, if she's had enough to eat, if she needs to be burped, like all of these things is going to be tailored to baby specifically. Like I said, even if you breastfed before, it's going to be different per baby, but paying attention to them is really going to save you a lot of time later, because like I said, I was just watching the clock and not really paying attention to how she was eating. So she could have fallen asleep for like 5 minutes, and then I look down and be like, oh, you know, keep eating or whatever. And then next thing you know, when I think I'm done feeding her, we'll go back out in the room, my mom will take her and she looks like she's hungry again. My mom's like, I think she wants to eat. And I'm like, I just fed her. And you're gonna feel like you're feeding them constantly. But really, I could have saved myself another entire breastfeeding session if I was paying attention to her and making sure that she was getting what she was needing the first time around. So it's really important to, until you become comfortable, which for most women takes 3 to 4 weeks to really get in the swing of having a newborn baby in the house. Doesn't matter if you're a first-time mom or not, but especially if you're a first-time mom, you kind of just getting thrown into the hands-on training of taking care of a newborn baby. And if you're breastfeeding, it's just like a whole other process that you have to learn as well. So 3 to 4 weeks is how long it took for me to really feel comfortable breastfeeding her, to the point that I could still peep what's going on with her without having to really watch her. I could briefly distract myself by watching the TV or having my phone in my hand, and I'd still be able to, you know what I mean, hold her confidently and just all of those things. So it takes some time, but please be patient, because breastfeeding is a process, but it is such a beautiful and important thing, in my opinion. Just knowing that you're nourishing your baby and giving them everything that they need is just really important, and anything that's really important is not easy. So once you get over that first hump, I promise you're going to love it like I do. Okay, and the last tip that I have for you guys is, I'm not sure if you are mainly thinking about exclusively breastfeeding or exclusively pumping with your breast milk and just bottle feeding, but I would say keep an open mind to switching it off, either or. Personally, I for the most part breastfeed just like straight out of the breast but I also do have some bottles, and I keep a stash of pumped breast milk in the freezer for just like emergency purposes. And then I also like to keep like 1 bottle of breast milk in the fridge, just in case like my husband needs to feed her or something like that. I would say this kind of ties in with the lactation consultants again, because once you start to breastfeed your baby, you might want to consider introducing a bottle. I know one reason why I was hesitant to introduce a bottle and a pacifier to my baby in the first couple of weeks was because in my research I learned about nipple confusion, and I didn't want her to take a bottle that was going to be much easier to get the milk out of than breastfeeding, since it is something that she had to learn to do, and it's not exactly the easiest thing in comparison to a bottle that's just basically squirting milk out into it's easy for them. So that, and then with the pacifier as well, I didn't want her to take those things and then decide she didn't want to breastfeed anymore, because that happens sometimes. It's nipple confusion. So I was scared of that at first, and I was like, no, we don't need to give her a bottle, like not yet. Let us learn how to breastfeed together first, and when she gets better at that, then maybe a bottle then. But we went to our first appointment. I think it was like her 3rd day born, and it was one of my midwives that was there actually, and she personally told me that she didn't think that my daughter was gonna have an issue with nipple confusion just by the way that she saw us in our element. The way that she saw her breastfeeding, the way she was nursing essentially. So I took her advice and I went for it, and we introduced a bottle to her. So this was so helpful for me, because not just being a first-time mom, but just nursing a newborn baby is a round-the-clock job. Feeding a newborn baby, whether you're formula feeding, breastfeeding, bottle feeding, it's a round-the-clock job. Every 2 to 3 hours, and sometimes more than that when they're going through like a growth spurt or something. So it gets very tiring, and being up with her all night, my husband started to basically relieve me for a few hours in like very early morning, like 4 to 7 a.m. So I would pump a bottle for her so that he could hold her for those few hours and I could get some sleep, because I wasn't getting any more than like 3 hours of sleep, if that. It was like choppy in the first few weeks of her being born. So it was really helpful for me. So I would just say, if you're really adamant about being exclusively this or exclusively that, like open your mind up to maybe not being so adamant. I don't know what your reasoning may be, but for me it was very helpful. And if you do your research, you might see the pros and cons of one way or the other, or mixing them like I do. So definitely, I guess if there's a tip number 5, it would definitely be to do your research, which is always my tip. Before I had my baby, I was geeked. I was so excited to have my baby, and I was just looking up all the information that I could in regards to breastfeeding, everything, like anything, deliveries, just a pregnancy journey, everything I was looking up, and I was just so excited to be taking in all this information as a first-time mom. So if you're watching this right now, then you're already doing your part in looking into how you can make your breastfeeding experience more comfortable for you earlier on. And that's the first step, because literally it's hands-on training. It's something that you can look up a bunch of stuff and you'll know the knowledge, but once you get in the position, then you'll realize, like, dang, it's really awkward holding her, or you know, you have to learn these things just by doing. But it's helpful when you have the knowledge of certain things in regards to, I feel like, are my words coming together right now? Are they? Like, I don't know. Having the knowledge plus the hands-on experience that you will gain, it'll just make your experience better. You'll be way more well equipped to becoming comfortable in what you're going to be doing every single day, which is taking care of baby. And I promise, if you're patient and you do your research and you use a consultant for help and like all of these things that I named, you are going to love breastfeeding. Like, I'm so sure that you're going to love it, because you're just going to feel like you're doing what you're meant to do. And that's my personal opinion. I don't have anything against if you choose to formula feed, or maybe if you can't breastfeed, like those are different situations. I can't really speak on that because I don't have experience with either of those two, but I can just tell you from my personal experience, I love breastfeeding. And my little chunky monkey is everybody always says how big she is and how chunky she is, and it makes me so proud to say I did that. Like, that's on me right there. Like, that's on me. So I hope this video was helpful for you guys. If it was, make sure you give me a big thumbs up. And if you're not already subscribed to my channel, hopefully you will. So thank you guys so much for watching, and please let me know what kind of content you guys want to see from me. I do have a list of things that I want to share, but it would be even better if you guys just told me what you guys want me to produce for you guys. So yeah, thank you for watching, and thank you for watching.